If your New Year's resolutions are to travel and exercise more, you should probably try becoming a tech writer and do a massive amount of schlepping at CES next week. Two birds, one stone. This is the Android Police Podcast. It's Thursday, January 2nd. A belated Happy New Year to everyone. I'm David Reddick, and joining me today is reviews editor for Engadget and a co-host of the Engadget podcast. She's never low on opinions this year. That's a good pun. Cherlynn Low, the queen of puns, quite honestly, based on your Twitter
Really?
profile name game.
Y'all are way too kind. There's people that hate that I do that, but there's a vast majority of you that love it. So I'm
It's
glad.
very entertaining to me. It's like a surprise every time I see you tweet like what your handle is now.
It's currently Kylo Ren, like Kylo Ren. I got more coming up. Y'all should stay tuned.
Do you like keep a doc? Do you have a list?
I used to, and I want to keep it topical. So I always just like wait for inspiration to strike and to change it.
What was the one before this one? Because I felt like that one was really good.
It was the Mandalorian.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I
Oh,
enjoyed that one. Yeah. So I never changed my Twitter profile name. I probably should do that once in a while.
it's good
But
for your branding.
yes, it is totally. It definitely gets you out there. So today we're gonna start with something like honestly it's fairly boring to me, but I
Mhm.
think that is a kind of a big deal. It's going to be the next big phone announcement we get for a while, I guess, because like we're not going to really get any cool new phones until MWC.
Mhm.
So the Galaxy S10 Lite and Note 10 Lite have started leaking in abundance at this point. We've seen a lot of them. It's the first time Samsung is doing, I guess you would say, a light version of the Note. It's also the first time they're using light, like to name the phones. It seems like, and it looks like these phones could actually be pretty decent, which is, I think, a shakeup for Samsung in terms of what their budget phones offer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that Samsung hasn't done a light phone. I think that I consider the Note 10 a bit of kind of like sort of almost a light of the
Sure.
Note
Yeah.
10 Plus, and then the S10e, I guess, was also kind of a light of the S10. So the S10 Lite would be confusing. Like, how would you differentiate that? And then otherwise, the Galaxy A series has always been a pretty decent, sort of step down phone, I guess. So I'm confused. I don't know what this would be about really for Samsung. But you're right, the specs seem very sound.
Yeah, and I think with the A series, those have been very popular in like Asia, the Middle East, I think in Europe to an extent too, but in America, we don't usually get the good A series phones. We get the ones that
Mhm.
are kind of trash. So I assume the fact that it sounds like Samsung's going to be showing these off at CES next week probably means we'll get them in America maybe. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, I would be surprised if Samsung showed a phone off there. I haven't I mean, thought of CES as a phone show in a long time, and so it would be
No.
very yeah, I don't have high hopes that they're actually going to roll this out at CES. If anything, I think that they're gonna show it off at MWC after the next, S phone launch, probably.
Interesting, yeah. So I mean, Samsung did do this for a while with their phones where they had the minis, which
Mhm,
were like objectively not good. They were actually all very bad, and Samsung kind of stopped making them after a while because I think they started to get a reputation as being
mhm.
really heavily downgraded. But they tried to push them through with the Galaxy S like flagship name, and I think with these ones maybe we're seeing a more I would say more of an authentic take on, lifting the name. It looks like the Note 10 Lite will have a stylus. The specifications look pretty good. And I assume the S10 Lite will, I'm guessing they'll both have OLED screens. I feel like in the budget space, you have to do that at this point.
Well, it looks
With
like
all,
Super AMOLED, I think, was one of the rumors, but we don't know. Again, it's all, like, rumors at this point.
yeah, I think that they kind of like have to at this point with Redmi and Realme and Vivo and Oppo all putting OLED screens in all of their cheaper phones now. I think Samsung is facing a lot of pressure from these like especially China, quite frankly, where their brand has really suffered. Samsung hasn't really sold many phones in China. The domestic brands have taken over, and now you've got like these budget phone manufacturers that are super popular in India.
And also, I mean, if you think about it, last year when Google did the Pixel 3a, that really like gave more weight, I think, to the idea that affordable phones could be a thing. Like light doesn't have to be a bad word. I mean, I guess in the Pixel 3a's case, it's 3a, but you could affordable phones are a good thing. I don't understand why we have to pay $1,000 for a phone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we gave the Pixel 3 our phone of the year for that reason. We're like, wow, like you get everything that makes the Pixel awesome for half the price. There are some small compromises you have to make, but it really was surprisingly few. So I hope Samsung gets a little more competitive there. I think as much as they do have some good stuff with the A series, I have always felt that their mid range budget stuff is overpriced. They ask a lot of money for the specifications. Those A series phones can be as expensive as a Galaxy S phone.
They are very high up there. They're in the $600 range sometimes, which is a good OnePlus phone range. Like the affordable OnePluses are like 400 plus, but the like pro OnePluses are that level, and then you might as well get a OnePlus at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we'll see Samsung be a little more responsive to what the wider market is doing rather than simply, playing to Apple, because I think that there are, more and more companies that are kind of like, drinking a bit of Samsung's milkshake. So they probably need to step it up.
Samsung milkshake is something I would love to drink at CES this year.
I would love it.
Hopefully it's a good party drink.
I will drink almost anything on the show floor at CES because it is a food and beverage desert.
It
It's a
really
terrible
is.
place.
It
I,
really
I
is.
I don't know why that is. Like, I wonder if like the convention center has like rules that like vendors can't like hand out food or something, so they can all direct traffic to the awful food court.
Yeah, they want to make money off of all these people. I think there's some places where you can get food,
There
but maybe they're
are,
secret.
yeah, I've been to a few of like the inside lounges, and there's like a little bit of snackage, but it's usually quite meager. I also just hate the CES show floor in general, so I avoid it as much as humanly possible.
I stay away.
Um, So let's talk about CES for a little bit. We've talked about this on the show a lot in the last couple of weeks, so I don't want to belabor CES because I think that it's easy to talk about, like how CES has become much less of a mobile show, which everybody I think understands at this point. Um, but like today is the first day of news releases for
Mm.
CES. Anything sticking out to you so far?
So far, it's like laptops. I mean, just because of what I cover phones, laptops, wearables. So the stuff in my purview that's really out there is the laptop stuff. And I mean, we've seen a lot of rumors about Samsung perhaps doing like a bezel-less TV. But I mean, that looks nice. The released pictures, the leaked pictures look nice, but the um only thing I've really seen so far on day one that stuck out, yeah, the XPS 13 just looks really nice.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really want them to push harder on design because HP really has come after them with like much better, more stylish looks. But who knows? The XPS line is just a classic, and you really can't go wrong with one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I had the first like next gen XPS 13 and honestly came to hate it with a passion, but I feel like they've come a long way with that laptop introducing like the what they call it, like the anti-gravity keyboard or whatever it is. They have some dumb name for it. Maglev keyboard, the
The
maglev
maglev.
keyboard. Yeah,
Those, have you tried those?
I've tried it briefly. It's
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's
Yeah.
alright. It's a little too clicky. It's like and then, like, it's like a jammed arcade button a little bit, but then it has that, like it comes up. It just feels a little, like, stickier than I'm used to.
Yeah, I think it's anything is a massive improvement on the one they had in the original XPS 13 from like 20, I
Absolutely.
think it was 2014 when I got that laptop. Yeah, that thing was kind of a pile of garbage. I was really glad to see they switched to a 1610 display too. I
Yes,
think that like I love the tall laptop trend. Give me all the tall laptops.
absolutely. But,
Yeah.
yeah, there's more to come, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see a lot more laptops. I'm sure Lenovo, Acer, Asus, they will all start, tumbling on down. Samsung
Mm.
already had one today as well, which
Mhm.
doesn't look very interesting, honestly. But
What? I love the Galaxy Book laptops. They're amazing.
yeah, I don't know. I feel
This
like
particular one.
yeah, it's very meh. It's just a budgety version of one they already have, which is
Exactly.
yeah, totally fine, I guess, but not especially interesting. We also saw today Klipsch announced some new true wireless earbuds, one of which costs $1,000. which is
That is
absolutely insane.
ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That's not the trend I think we should be seeing this year. I think we should be seeing wireless earbuds get cheaper and better. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that side of it. So the $1,000 ones, like there's a big asterisk there. You're paying for McLaren branding on them, so they're not really $1,000. You can get the same earbuds for $650 if you don't want like the carbon fiber McLaren case. So they're just charging a huge amount for the name on top of
What
them.
is up with McLaren? They're in everything. Did you see the
Yeah.
McLaren Labs, the phone, the OnePlus, right?
Yep.
There's
Yep.
also a McLaren something else that came out recently.
There's like their licensing game is getting strong over there. I think they realize, they're starting to become like, I think honestly like McLaren wants to get like to the Porsche design game, like,
Yes,
where they're up there with the luxury brand names, but I don't know. It seems scattershot right now, their approach. Headphones is a weird one.
it's very weird. I don't get it.
Yeah. So these headphones actually they are pretty cool. The $650 ones, a mere $650 for your true wireless earbuds, use Klipsch's balanced armature system, which is opposed to dynamic drivers, which is what most earbuds right now use. I think all true wireless earbuds right now use dynamic drivers. Klipsch uses multi balanced armatures, or more like it's kind of like a filament instead of a screen, I guess is the way to describe it. And so they are preferred by a lot of people who like are obnoxious audiophiles. But if you use several balanced armatures, you can have a headphone that has like a lot more dynamic range and I think sounds a lot clearer, which I think has been kind of my problem with true wireless earbuds so far, which has been the sound is good. It's not great. I've heard the
Mhm.
AirPods Pro sound pretty good, but Apple has never, made audiophilia like a thing that they care about very much. Like that's for the aftermarket, that's for other headphones.
Mm.
So I think that Klipsch is hopefully going to bring what will be the first like in-ear monitor grade true
Mm.
wireless earbud, which is what somebody annoying like me kind of wants at this point.
So you're an audio like geek, like you're really into your music and stuff like that?
I'm an audiophile skeptic mostly, but I like the idea because I like headphones like, the ones I'm wearing right now are these by Blue, and I got these a long time ago, and they're planar magnetic headphones, and I think they MSRP for like $700 or something, but I did not have to pay that much. And they sound really great. I don't care about all like the like got to listen to my music in FLAC, or I have to use Tidal because it's the original source quality. I just like things that sound good.
Yeah, that's fair. I see, I'm more of like that mainstream audience that doesn't care as much. And for that reason, I think Apple's approach doesn't like annoy me too much. And most of the wireless earbuds I've tried sound okay. I think it's the Sony WF-1000 XM3s, like the current industry gold
Yeah.
standard, I guess, are as good as I'm gonna like want to spring out any like big money for, really.
Yeah, definitely. I can see like the budget thing being a big deal. Like, I mean, honestly, if you're a headphone nerd, you can get a really good set of wired headphones for like under $100 at this point, but wireless has really struggled to make that jump to the
Mhm.
idea that, well, we can do like the same stuff, but we can make it wireless and it doesn't have to cost $1 million, because like the problem with audiophiles is most of them are like wireless is like anathema to them. Like
Yes.
they're like, that is the devil right there, and
Yes.
so the companies like Sennheiser and, that's obviously the big one. Audio Technica, they do make wireless products, but they're a tiny sliver of their portfolio and they're very expensive. So I'm hoping that we see that trend start to change. Hopefully, we'll see some stuff at CES.
I think we might, yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, CES, we can talk about that endlessly, but let's talk a little bit about like I saw Engadget posted some pretty good best and worst tech of the year, and
I'm
I
glad you
found
think it was pretty good. I was in charge of rounding that up.
yeah, nicely done.
Thank
And I
you.
think that your pick for the worst was interesting. It's a device that I think, is kind of interesting to discuss because, it's Microsoft Surface Pro X. And It's a product that I've heard, honestly, like I've heard like opinions down the spectrum on. Like there's some people who are super hot on it and they're like, this is really great. I think it's like, the next level for Windows. The form factor is so outstanding. Like it gets me that true ultra portability I've always wanted in my Surface. And then you've got like another slice of people, honestly, who are, usually from the bigger tech websites and say, no, like Microsoft has a lot of problems to fix here. We just don't recommend this product to anybody. We don't think anybody should buy this unless you were going in eyes wide open, realizing what you're getting. So what do you think were like, what really was its downfall?
I think you got to consider the audience of the sites and the people who recommend things. For a bigger site, I think you're not expecting someone who knows their stuff as well to be reading it as the people who might be checking out a smaller, more niche publication. So, for example, someone I think who comes to Android Police would be someone who's very into like, oh, who's comfortable, like, I know, like side loading something into their phone and figuring out how to like unlock their bootloader or something. Whereas someone who maybe reads a Time or New York Times doesn't actually understand any of that. And so for those people, the recommendation would be different. The Surface Pro X is a beautiful piece of hardware, has enough power for most people. But because, and I think its biggest downfall to your point is that it doesn't make it very clear what apps are compatible. It does suffer from crashes and bugs from time to time. And for the mainstream user like my mom or dad, they're not going to understand. They're going to be very frustrated. They're not going to understand that you have to look out for specifically like a 32-bit or like an ARM recompiled or something, because they're going to use Internet Explorer
Yeah.
for some reason and try to install a virus and like or try to install whatever the hell they want to install, and it's not gonna work, and they're gonna think that their computer is broken, take it to tech support, and only to be told that like, nah, this is working the way it's supposed to. And that's a big problem. I think for someone who's a bit more well versed like myself, the Pro X is amazing. I know what to expect, but not everyone does, and I think that's where it is. It's like you don't make it very easy for people to know without a lot of knowledge what to do with it, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole Windows on ARM thing, god, just try harder.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough one to solve, and I think this kind of like I wrote an article today about Chrome OS and its situation, and it gets to the point of like recommending laptops to like a general population is actually, I mean, it's getting to the point where I feel like what I don't know what regular people need anymore. I'm not really sure what exactly they're doing with these laptops because to me, like, my parents, like my dad will use a laptop for work, but he's using like Microsoft Outlook, he's using Excel, he's using QuickBooks, like he is using like the hard software that like if he even switching to a Mac would be a little too it's a little scary.
Yes.
Whereas like my mom doesn't even have a laptop anymore, she just uses a keyboard with her iPad, which is where I
Mhm.
think a lot of people have gone, if that.
Yes.
Some of them just have a phone now. Like a lot
Yes.
of people don't have laptops, and so when I look at these laptops, I'm like, if you are the person who needs a laptop, you probably have some specific thing you want it to do. And that makes it hard to recommend a device like the Surface Pro X because it's like, well, you have all of these caveats, and like probably, especially if you're a Windows user, you're using some kind of legacy application. It's not going to work right
Definitely.
with it. And the same ends up being true of Chrome, where I'm like, everybody's like, should I get a Chromebook? And I'm like, well, I mean, what do you want to do with the laptop? And like, if the first answer is like, well, like I just want to be able to like, sometimes I need to open a Word doc, and I'm like, well, there you go, stop, don't buy.
Yep. Goodbye.
Yeah, so it's become I feel like, it's a situation where I've had to like really I don't know, I had to take stock in the fact that like we looked at like Chrome, like, and we recommend Chromebooks, like, but I feel like we can only recommend them to the people who already know they want one. And I feel like the Surface Pro X is a similar situation where the platform has so many limitations that you're like, well, you have to already know you want this.
Yes, I like the idea of Windows and Snapdragon. I actually like Chromebooks too, but they're for people who can afford to have a secondary device that doesn't do all the things that you need your like device to do. And so for people who don't have the, I guess, extra cash to spend, and you need your main machine to do all the things, and that's actually a very large segment of the population that we don't take into account, because to be honest, we're a little removed from a lot of different parts of society, and so that's like it's hard to just be like one size fits all. It is nice though that we have options that are getting better, and I think that these niche seemingly niche features like super long battery life, always on or always connected, will start to trickle down, and that's just good for all.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's actually like been interesting to watch in the last like I would say 6 years or so. The laptop market has really gone through like a rebirth. Like, laptops for a long time were like something you had to deal with mostly. Like laptops were bad. They were really,
Yeah, yeah.
really clunky. And Intel really got things moving again with the Ultrabook like campaign and changed designs a lot. So I
Mhm.
know that you wrote about some of like the ultra thins that have been happening. I've
Yes.
not used any of these really because I don't usually like big laptops, but like LG's Gram, every time
Oh,
they announce it, I'm always a little bit like, "Oh, that's fascinating."
yeah.
It's so itty bitty, but so
It is.
big.
It is. It's so light. I think it's controversial in a way because it does feel like a coin, kind of like a piece of paper sometimes, right? With so light, but at the same time, flexes a little bit, but it's by design because it's meant to be that light. And they can't, if they want to make it sturdier, they would have to make it heavier. And that's not the point of the Gram series. I like it. I think it's really light. I can live with the flex, but there's a lot better out there if you want something else. I mean, I think the Surface laptop has come such a long way, and it's so great. It's a nicely designed machine. Then you have the XPS 13. You have all sorts of machines from every brand. They're all getting better. I'm so happy to be a laptop reviewer nowadays. When I first started, it was awful because they were all elephants, and now it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I can bring this home, no problem.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have a Surface Laptop 3. I bought one. I love it because I was like, I got so honestly fed up with my Pixelbook and dealing with
Oh,
Chrome OS. I love the Pixelbook to death, but I just couldn't hang anymore with Chrome. Unfortunately, it's like
oh,
like 2 times a month I need to open up Lightroom or Photoshop, and I'm just like completely paralyzed in my workflow. I'm like, I have to get back to my desktop computer. What if I'm not at home? So it was a bit of a bummer. But I came to Surface Laptop 3 having like my last Ultrabook experience was like 5 years ago,
mm,
and so I came to Surface Laptop 3 expecting like, all right, I'm going to be making a lot of compromises, switching back to Windows again. This is going to be kind of lame, and been super pleasantly surprised. Like, been like, oh, I feel like Windows 10 is like gotten to a place on laptops where it was not like 4 years ago,
mhm.
and I think that like the interface is cleaned up a little bit. They've cleaned up like the Windows Hello menu and everything. It's
Yeah.
become a nicer place to be. Also, Windows, I think, has finally gotten a hang on like the resolution scaling, which was a big problem for a long
Yes.
time with the high density display laptops, which I hated on my XPS 13 when I had it. I downscaled it and made the screen blurry, and I'm like, I hate it. Thanks.
I forgot
Um,
that even happened. That's true. I forgot. I've been
uh,
living with PCs for a long time. I mean, well, Windows for a long time, so I now realize that yeah, that used to be a problem.
It really was. It was a pretty big issue, and yeah, it
Oh.
made me. I resented that laptop by the time I got rid of it. I
Oh.
was like, I really didn't like it. Um, so other big things in the last year. Were there any other ones like obviously other people contributed to the list? Any other ones that you particularly resonated with you?
Foldables. Foldables were all hyped up in 2019, and you know what? They were very cool. I'm excited to see interesting new technology I haven't seen before. But man, were they a mess, right? Like in 2019, they just never really got anywhere.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I feel like there's a large group of people right now who really, really, really want to cheerlead for foldables because like it is going to be the next big evolution according to a lot of people, and so everybody's a little afraid to be too down on them. And like after using the razor for a minute, I was like, okay, I feel a little bit excited about this. That
I
finally
love
was the
the
one. That was the one where I was finally like, okay, there's potential here.
Yeah,
Um,
I wish they had gone for a more powerful processor. The Snapdragon 710 is, I believe, what it uses,
yeah,
and I'm not sure about that. I don't think you're expected to. I mean, even the way the screen is set up, you're not supposed to use this the way you would use a regular smartphone these days, I don't think, because it's a little longer than a regular smartphone. And then when you fold it,
right.
yeah, it fits nicely, but then what can you do with it? It's like kind of odd. But man, yeah, that thing feels great. It reminds me of such a nice time when I was a teenager, when I was young, and I had the world ahead of me.
Yeah, I think that what I like about it is that it does solve one real consumer complaint, which is my phone doesn't fit in my pants. Like it's a legit complaint.
Yes, it really is. I don't really have pockets a lot, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
for people, like I feel like, like if you use like a OnePlus 7 Pro, a phone that's like a true like honker of a phone, and then you put a case on it, even for me with like big guy jeans, I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. Like it's basically like peeking out of my pocket. Like that's it's too big.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually, I think we're gonna get to see the end of the next decade. I think we're going to see a phone that is sort of like the Razor, but just much better. Just this in terms of size, it fits nicely. It might be even thinner, and then we're gonna have good power, good apps, good software. That's my prediction for 2030.
2030. So you think it'll take till 2030 until foldable phones have reached like basically like the point where do you think they'll be mainstream?
I think by 2030, not mainstream, but definitely in much better shape than they are now. I think that by middle of like the 2020s, so maybe 2025, 2026, they'll get a lot better. I think there's still a lot of challenges in the way though for it before it becomes mainstream by the next 10 years.
Interesting. So I'm very curious to see if Samsung's Galaxy Fold 2 ends up being. There is one rumor that suggests it will use flexible glass. I don't know that I buy it.
How do you
Um,
how can glass be flexible? I guess there must be things in the works I don't know about.
Corning has had, I believe it was on CNET earlier last year, did say they are working on it. Like it's a thing. They got a demo. I think they've got it rolling down to a radius of like, I forget how many millimeters. It's fairly tight,
It's
but
it's it's not just the glass though, it's also like the pixels of the screen tech. There's a lot to work out, and the glass is one big step in protecting all of that stuff, which is great. I'm excited. There's still so much that you have to figure out. Just like if you fold it flat, then you're gonna like have that like dead thing that like you're just gonna like you can't completely fold it. Let's just say that.
yeah,
And
of
that's
course.
sort of not gonna happen. But maybe they'll figure something out.
Yeah, I think that, we have like two technologies that really probably need to be in place. Like number one is like the bending glass. I think that like if it is feasible, I don't material science is not like Moore's law. You don't know what's going to happen. Like it could just be like, well, nope, we can't do it. It doesn't work. We tried.
Mhm.
Um the other one is that I think we're finally seeing some movement on. Like I've even got a CES pitch for a company or graphene batteries.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
which are finally like, there are companies in China manufacturing them now. Like they're a real thing. So, I know that one of them is like apparently like it has like graphene batteries in a fleet of tens of thousands of scooters in Shenzhen or something.
Mhm.
So like they're getting there. So when they come to phones, the idea hopefully is that you have better energy density, faster charging, and longer life cycle. And I think that the better energy density will allow you to make the battery smaller, which nobody wants to hear, but for foldables, I think is frankly probably what has to happen.
Yeah, it needs to power so much more screen. I saw like my first flexible battery prototype back like 5 years ago at Computex, and it still hasn't come out, and in a big way anyway. And so I'm kind of still waiting
That
for.
just sounds dangerous. Like I would be a little bit
Yeah,
like skeptical of that.
a lot of stuff sounds dangerous, right? Like I mean, for the scooters you're talking about and the graphene batteries that they're like mass producing, I guess, on a level, all give me like I get nervous about tech that's so new and then untested, like the Galaxy Note 7. The stuff is going to happen before we figure out like what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, man, what a story that was. I feel like we never actually got a satisfactory explanation as to what happened there. It was just like, well, something didn't work right in the thing, and then boom. So like I
It
feel
was
like
they did say it was they alluded to it was like they were trying to pack too much power into the battery or something like that, and I was like, yeah, all right. Yeah.
I guess like I like it was just like they never provided a technical explanation of it, which was so bizarre to me. Like, was the battery just getting hot and expanding a little bit in the space, and it generate just enough pressure, or I
Mm.
don't know. That was fun times though. I do remember the courier came to my apartment with a like special like safety box to transport the phone and take it away from me. And I remember hearing stories about Philip Byrne going to people's houses to pick up
Oh,
their Oh,
that's amazing. I mean, I would that would be a fun time having Phil appear at your doorstep. I'll just be like, "Hi, what's up?" He'd be
yeah.
like, phone.
There were apparently some people who did not want to give them back, and so there were
I mean,
there's a campaign.
the same deal with the Fold too, right? Where
Yeah.
they had to get it back from reviewers, and reviewers were not wanting to give them back either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Samsung is gonna Samsung.
Yeah.
We will take a quick break here to run an advertisement for ourselves. The Android Police podcast is live on Twitch 4 times a week. You can catch the actual podcast on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, usually around noon Pacific. We also have our Q&A show on Tuesdays with Cody and/or Corbin. That's usually around 1 p.m. Pacific time. If you love the Android Police podcast, get on Twitch, subscribe on Twitch Prime. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can subscribe to our podcast for free. So if you subscribe to us on Twitch as a Twitch Prime member, you put money in our pockets. You take it from Jeff Bezos and transfer it to us. And it doesn't cost you anything, which I think is the best part. So if you go to twitch.tv/Android Police, you can subscribe today. Benefits you get a Rhine emoji in our live chat room, which I'm not convinced is a benefit, but it is what you get. And also, when you resubscribe every month, which is what really helps us out when you all resubscribe, we'll drop a giant Pixel 3 XL notch down in the middle of the video stream, which is fun for everyone. You can also pay to subscribe. Tiers start at $5 a month. And you can, once again, check us out, twitch.tv/Android Police. If you don't want to use Twitch and you don't want to subscribe, you can also head to androidpolice.com and hit the donate button if you just want to say thanks. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will get back to the show. All right. So I think that maybe another area we could. I always like to ask like I think this is one of my favorite questions to ask other tech journalists, and this is like one that we've done for a number of people now. What
Yes.
was your first computer?
Oh my god. An HP Pavilion. So bear in mind I was in Singapore, so maybe our model names are different. My first computer, you mean like the one that I owned or like my first one I ever used?
First, well, I mean, we could do both, but I usually like what was the first computer you used on like a regular basis?
Oh my god. Um an Acer, chunky ass Aspire, that's not the official name. Yeah, it was like this really I still have it, I think. And I brought it to America with me. It had like maybe what 20 gigs of storage on board or something. No, actually maybe 200 megabytes or something. So I mean, listen, I don't remember that thing. It was so old. I remember being a kid and playing on my family HP Pavilion, doing like basic HTML, creating GeoCities websites. It was so much
Oh,
fun.
GeoCities.
Oh, dude, yeah. That computer was a shared computer, so I just didn't have a lot of access to it, but I would fight people for it. It was great.
Cool. Yeah, I always like that one. And what was your first? Okay, let's like let's do a phone history. I think that's a good one. How many phones can you
Oh,
remember having?
oh, at least 10. Yeah, at least 10. And I'm not that young, so I think 10's maybe not an impressive number. I had a bunch of Nokias because I started again in Singapore. We had the 73 something 50 3310's not one of them, I think. I remember I had a Razor for a while. I had a Samsung something. All these are flip phones. Numbers don't matter. But I would take my Nokia and I would change out the case and buy the cases that you like put them on and they look like a Samsung out of
Ah,
nowhere. You know what those? Oh man, I love those. I would put the transparent ones on. And then I started using smartphones like the Nokia E7 Symbian was my jam. And I had a Samsung Odyssey for a while with the little like janky stylus. And then yeah, and then I started covering tech and I just have had iPhones and Pixels and Galaxies ever since. Just kind of
yeah.
boring actually.
Everybody's phone history is always more interesting than mine. Like I just never cared about phones as a
What was
kid.
yours?
Oh God, I think my first phone was like I didn't have a smartphone until high school, or I didn't have a flip phone until high school. I don't think. Like I had some crappy Kyocera. It sucked. It was bad. And then like I switched to like I only had two flip phones before I had a smartphone. Like that's how like I held on that stupid Kyocera for like I think like 4 years or something.
Do you
Like
have an
I
emotional attachment to it?
no, I just didn't care. Like it just didn't matter to me. I'm like I don't ever use the phone like because I grew up in like peak internet chat era. And so like I just talked to everybody on IM. Like I didn't care about like what my phone did. Like texting was barbaric,
Mm,
and like I phone calls
I
cost
love
money.
text. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when they charged, like, text by the text, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, man.
Yes.
I would rack
Yeah.
up such a huge bill.
Yeah, the only kids that like when I was in high school, the only kids who could afford to do that were the ones who either had Blackberries because their parents bought them for them, and so Blackberries had unlimited messaging and they'd talk on BBM, or the kids who had T-Mobile Sidekicks because they
Mhm.
came with unlimited messaging, which one of the few phones to do that. So yeah, like I switched like by the time I was a sophomore in college, I think I got like a Sony Ericsson flip phone on AT&T, like a relatively new one with like a full color screen. I forget what model it was. It could surf the internet and everything. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't completely stupid, but like and then I moved to a Nexus 1. Like I just never had
Nice.
many phones. And that was like that's when I actually became interested in them. But um yeah, so I think that like I never had an experience with Symbian. Like I never used it.
Dude, Symbian was a wild time. Like I sort of tried programming things for Symbian. Like you could it, but the thing is, like the second I was exposed to Android, Symbian just became awful. Like you'd have to like rearrange your apps in a way so that they laid out and made sense. But there were a lot of widgets you could use, and then I tried coding for it, but then I just gave up because it was just difficult. And it was a wild time. Man, it was so long ago too. I feel old.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel old too. So we can share that feeling. So you like you said, you grew up in Singapore. So what kind of like perspective? Like obviously, in Asia, like Singapore is proximate, much more proximate to like a lot of the technology that ended up defining the 90s and 2000s
Mm,
in terms of like computing and communication and everything. That's when the US really started to fall behind on computers. Like, all our computers started coming from Asia. So how is that? Do you find that influences, or I would say, is it like painted the evolution of tech in a different way to you?
Yeah, I mean, so it's very strange because it blinds me a little bit in terms of my knowledge of certain technologies. Like 4G, I when America was getting 4G and getting into all of that rollout stuff and all of the chaotic news that came from it, Singapore was still on 3G. We weren't even dealing with any of that, so I didn't have exposure to a lot of that news. And then I came over when Singapore was getting a 4G rollout. That's when I was in America, and 4G was pretty much done. So I really have that blind spot in terms of my knowledge. But then Singapore's a very advanced city. We've been using contactless payments on our public transit for like the longest time. Coming over to America and living here was such a shock because, like, oh my gosh, a lot of the things in your infrastructure is so old
Yeah.
and so hard to deal with. And that you're only now in 2019 starting to roll out like only in bits and pieces too, like contactless payments or like tap to enter your turnstiles, that sort of thing. Come to Singapore one day. Just check out how we got our shit together. You know what I mean? I don't know if I
Yeah.
can swear on this
Yeah, you can
podcast.
say shit on this podcast. I don't care. I okay. In America's defense, Manhattan and New York in general has its shit least together with that. Like it
That's
is the worst. Like I hate going to New York and paying for things. It's like
You're right.
oh, it actually I like whereas in Silicon Valley, we're at like like the peak of acceptance of like new forms of payment and everything. Like there are restaurants in San Francisco that won't take cash anymore, which
Mm,
is I think discriminatory and not okay. But,
mm.
like it does show like it's moving, but yeah, New York is so bad about that. Like
New
I
York
really
is
now that they
is
have tap to pay on the subway, like that's like thank God. Like
well, it's
they
not
have it
fully
some
rolled out.
places. Yeah, they have it a few places. But
I
BART's had,
haven't
like, contactless forever. You have to use a card, but, like, it
Yeah,
works. We
the
have it
path
in
does
all in
that.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, the path is great. But right, but like in London already they're using their phones. In Singapore also, I think. New York, you're right, is like a specifically anachronistic place, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and the rest of America is a lot better. Actually, I've been to like other cities where I've been impressed. So sure, yeah, but yeah, New York was being from Singapore. Oh man, the perspective is just that it's just like yeah, in Asia we're so far ahead on certain things, but we're also a little behind on some other things. So it's hard to say how that affects my work. Really, I don't really know. I just
Yeah.
go like what, and then I have to study harder. I think that's what it is. Is I have to study a little harder because I don't understand all of the American history that maybe colors other reporters' perspectives on certain things. Like y'all, when I talked to Devindra, who's my co-host on our podcast, about like the 5G rollout. He's like, yeah, but the same thing happened with 4G, and I was like, I guess, you know.
Yeah, 4G was I would argue the other way. I would say 4G was very different, which is something I think is like weird in its truth, like because it's kind of counterintuitive. 5G in a lot of ways has been easier for carriers,
Mm,
but 4G rolled out more quickly because of the
mm,
way it was achieved. So it was a bit of a, like the United States, like basically, I mean, the United States mostly, aside from Korea, like ends up paving the way for a lot of this technology. Granted, with 5G, China is like, right there with us too this time.
mhm.
But yeah,
Korea was up
for
there though.
yeah, Korea was really, I mean, Korea already has basically nationwide 5G. Like,
Yes.
I read the Wall Street Journal published a post that was basically highly indicting of 5G this week in
Oh,
Korea. Like they talked to this like executive in Korea, and I assume he has like a Galaxy S10 plus 5G, and he's like, I just turn it off most of the time because I don't like that it switches between 4G and 5G, and it's gets annoying. And I was like, oh wow, that's a bit of a hit piece.
yeah.
It was interesting, but Korea is usually first, and in America, like I remember like how transformative it was though. Like that was
Mm,
actually, I was on Verizon at the time, and that was the first proper nationwide 4G network America got.
mm,
T-Mobile had their HSPA plus, AT&T much more slowly rolled out LTE, and Sprint also, was behind. But like
mhm,
I realized like I can stream YouTube on my phone and I don't have to be at home. Like
mm.
that's kind of game changer.
For me, the move from like black and white browser. Sorry if you hear a bit of noise on my end. It's noisy coworkers. Um, but yeah, for moving from like the tiny WPA2 style, I'm not WAP. WAP. Anyway, that's sort of an internet where like it downloaded in giant block pixels by giant block pixels
Oh.
over to a proper browser on a smartphone. That was when my life was like, oh Lord, this is amazing. This is great.
Yeah, a lot of people like, when I interview people, that was their transformative experience, was moving to like the early smartphones. And I'm just like, "Yeah, I never had that. Like I always had like, I think, and I think it was honestly true, much more true for people in America too, was that most people did not make the smartphone transition until relatively late compared to the rest of the world. Like I think it was until the iPhone 3G and 3GS that really people started to switch.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like when I came over, there were people still using like very old, like Nokia style phones, and I was like, "What?" And they would be, somehow telling themselves that it's better to hang on to such old technology. Meanwhile, I'm there like, all right, well, I have an iPhone for now and it's great. I have all these things. The moment that I was convinced an iPhone or an iPod Touch back then was the what I really wanted was when my friend showed me a picture and she pinched the zoom and I was like, and now it's like everywhere, right? But before that, I was like, holy crap, I never thought to do that. And so, man, this
Pinch
past
yeah,
decade,
pinch
what have you
zoom.
seen? Yeah.
Yeah, rubber band scrolling, that was a big one, like, that made the iPhone, the fact that, like, bounced when you scrolled, and that was like, "Oh, wow, it's so interactive."
It was
We
great.
we
Oh,
appreciated the dumbest little things, like, it's in retrospect, it's like, wow, we got really excited about that, because I do remember using my first iPod Touch, and I was like, "Wait, this is
mhm.
really cool." Um, but I
Yeah.
remember also, like, my experience with the anachronistic technology was, like, I was in law school, and I would go to, like, these, like, like, lawyer trade events, and you would see all the lawyers use Blackberries, every single one of them. Very few had iPhones. It was like you were a bit of a wacky lawyer if you had an iPhone. That was a little weird. And then at that point, I had a Nexus One, and I like looked at Blackberries and what they could do, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, they're really fast for email," and I'm like, well, that's not going to last much longer, is it? Like I was like, no, it's a lot nicer on this side of the fence, guys.
It became true, right? And I mean, I remember my first friend to get a Nexus phone. I was like, "Whoa." I was like, "You're a maverick." And then like everyone else was really using like, yeah, Blackberries and stuff like that. I don't know, man. I was on Samsung. I think in Asia, the Samsung and the HTC phones were just much more popular. So a Nexus was really like, okay, all right, you're daring. And then now it's just everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. D-Man points out in the chat that the scrolling and pinch to zoom were major. Yes, they were major items of patent wars. I actually wrote a really long patent analysis of the rubber band patent. Like, this was like 7 years ago. I wrote that article. It's worth checking out. It's actually, I thought I was very proud of that article actually. But yeah, they were worth tons of money. Apple sued for like
Absolutely.
$100 million. Like they were very serious.
And it wasn't like they, I mean, I don't know that pinch to zoom, listen, that wasn't my time when I was covering tech, so I didn't really pay attention to the patent wars. I will say though, like before I even saw the iPod Touch and pinch to zoom, I saw like early surfaces where it was like touchscreens weren't a thing yet. And then my professor in computing 101 or something, computer science 101, was like, here's something Microsoft is working on. And then showed us the promo video of the back then surfaces were tables,
Yeah.
and you would leave your like credit card on the table and like an animation would show up and it's like, accepting payment from there. Now we're not there yet, but like man, I was like touchscreens, holy crap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
multi-touch in general was such a huge advancement. That was a big moment for the industry. I remember those early Surface concepts. Microsoft did some really awesome like concept videos for those. They
Yes,
they
those
showed some pretty, yeah. Like I was like, I want one of those. I don't know why, but I
I
want
know.
it. Like they
My
showed people
heart.
playing card games on them and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Oh
that was
man,
they were awesome demos.
just think how much our world has changed, and but yet how little really though.
Yeah, yeah. I feel well, I mean, I feel like it's shocking to think about, like, so if you went back 15 years ago and, like, did a side by side of, like, what people are doing as they walk down the street, that probably would be the single most, like,
Yes.
"Oh, that's something
Yes.
changed."
Yes. Yes. Vastly. And you know what? We're suffering the effects of it, but I don't want to get too much into that. But you can tweet at me about how depressed we all are getting collectively.
Yeah, yeah. The technology is too good. I can't let go of it. I'm addicted. So yeah. I do like, I like say this every week, but like smartphones really were like honestly, we got to be like around, right? Like we got to be in the prime of our lives when basically the equivalent of like the personal automobile was catching on. Like
Mm,
a total game changer. Like and so that kind of is where the way I think about it now. Like there's just so much that's happened because of the phone.
yes.
And I feel like everybody expects there to then be another quantum leap after that. And I'm like, no, I think we don't get too many of those. We get we get one of them every like century or two, depending. Like, I mean,
Really? You think that long?
I think, yeah, I think it was that transformative. Like we had computers, which were really big for the economy,
Mm,
and like business and doing your job. But computers is like something that changed our personal lives in a big way. I never felt they really did that, like because they were always in their space. Computers have a home, like they live in an office, they live at your desk at work. You're not permanently attached to them unless you're weirdos like us who were permanently attached to their computers. But like we were the exception rather than the rule. Whereas like today, you look at like phones and everybody has to have one.
yeah.
Like and everybody's interacting with it on like to an insane degree. Your
Yes.
phone like is so indispensable. Like the idea of leaving phone like leaving home without your phone, the fact that that is like a cultural movement,
Mm,
just like as
mm,
much as I need to know about how important smartphones are to
yep.
ordinary people. And I just don't think you get things that often. Like I think, like with the automobile, like you had a similar moment where, suddenly most homes had a way to get and go places that previously they would it would take months, like or weeks, or they just didn't go. They just
Yeah.
didn't go places. And
Yeah.
it completely changed the American experience for everybody. Like America really had a big moment because of the car.
I think we are in for another one to come, but and within our lifetimes, I think just maybe a lot later than I'd expect. But I do think that every now and then, actually I think every decade or two or so, we see something big. But you know what? I haven't lived that long. I'm not gonna say.
Yeah. Let's see here. I think we are getting to the point where we could probably wrap things up. I'm sure we
Yeah.
are all looking forward to getting back to wonderful CES prep.
Man,
Um,
the number of emails I already got, the number of notifications. Someone texted me about something at CES. I don't have their number saved on my phone, but it popped up, and I was like, all right, well, thanks.
That's lame. People should not be texting about CES. I hate text pitches. Those are the worst. I just ignore them. But you're in
Yeah.
laptop hell though, so you actually have stuff to do. Like I have like 5 meetings the whole show
Oh
for news.
man.
Like
Oh man, that sounds so great. Yeah, if you like Chris Velasco on our team handles phone coverage for us, well at least at CES. And yeah, he barely has anything really that much compared to some of us to do. And I'm like, all right, here, you can help me with this thing and everything.
always going to get roped into something. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been like trying. I've been looking through like embargoed stuff, and I'm like, wow, there's actually not anything here for us to cover. All right, cool, thanks, guys. So it's definitely getting to be less of a mobile thing. But anyway, let's see here. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Nah, not really. I don't think we need to discuss fuchsia. Fuchsia doesn't or deserve being discussed. Um,
You know what? Future actually owns a lot of companies well, one of the companies I used to work for, and I have a lot of friends who work there. So you're joining a great crowd, I think. The people are great.
oh, fuchsia, not future.
Oh, her future. My bad. I thought you were talking about that.
No, and thankfully, we are not owned by Future, but
Yeah, it got mixed up with Mobile Nations because y'all are
yes,
very similar names. Android Central is not Android Police.
Android things, yeah, just Android things in general. There,
It's an actual thing.
yeah, honestly, I don't like the name of our website, which is a sentiment I express every time I get an opportunity.
Oh, so they
Um,
gave you that opportunity. I'm glad.
Yes. So all the topics we've talked about today can be found at androidpolice.com/podcast. Again, we're live 4 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the show, usually around noon Pacific. You can catch us on twitch.tv/androidpolice. We'd love to hear your thoughts, unless you're going to bitch at us, in which case, don't send them. But podcast at androidpolice.com for all the good feedback or any questions you might have for us. We always accept questions via email. If you think of something you'd like to discuss on the show, we're always open to suggestions. Cherlynn, where can everybody find you?
On Twitter at Cherlynn Lowe.
Okay, and also, of course, at Engadget.
Also, I also co-host the Engadget podcast where I talk about really, really weird stuff. I
That's
guess.
good. I like
Yeah,
a podcast about weird stuff because honestly, a podcast that's about nothing but technology gets old real fast.
it does. And there's so many of us out there, honestly.
Yes, there are a lot of us. On Twitter, I am RDRV3. Our producer, Jules Wang, is at Point Jules, and our theme music is by Home. The Android Police EMT podcast will be back on Monday to catch you up on news from CES and elsewhere. But until then, enjoy your weekend and take care.